Read this sentence, and your eyes race from left to right. But for over 400 million Arabic readers and millions more in Hebrew, the exact opposite feels natural. Around 1050 BCE, Phoenician scribes were already carving letters that flowed right to left across stone and clay. 3,000 years later, that ancient habit still governs your smartphone, forcing engineers to solve puzzles no left-to-right writer ever notices. So why did these scripts choose the wrong direction? And was it ever really a choice at all? The real mystery isn't that Arabic and Hebrew run right to left. It's that the earliest alphabets couldn't decide on any direction at all. For centuries, writing was a wanderer. It went one way, then turned around and went the other, sometimes flipping the letters themselves like reflections in a mirror. That turning around had a name. The Greeks called it boustrophodon, which literally means as the ox plows. Picture a farmer driving oxen across a field. He cuts one furrow moving right, reaches the edge, then swings the animals back and cuts the next furrow moving left. Early Greek inscriptions did exactly this, line by line, snaking down the stone with no fixed rule about which side to begin. The Gorton Law Code, carved on Crete around 450 BCE, stretches across 12 columns of stone in exactly this ox plow pattern, with alternating lines reading in opposite directions across more than 600 lines of legal text. A reader's eye had to physically reverse at the end of every single line. Even the individual letters rotated to face the way each line traveled. An E might point right on one line and left on the next. And the Greeks weren't alone. Some early Semitic inscriptions run in multiple directions too. Vertical here, horizontal there, right to left on one line, and something else on the next. Before roughly 800 BCE, directionality was simply unstable. Writing was young and hadn't yet hardened into fixed lanes. The Mesha Stele, a Moabite monument from around 840 BCE now held in the Louvre, records King Mesha's rebellion against Israel across 34 lines. And even a script this developed sits inside a period where scribes were still experimenting with layout and spacing. So the question isn't why one direction won. It's how any direction won at all. The first alphabet to plant its flag firmly was Phoenician, and its choice mattered enormously. Because Phoenician is the ancestor of nearly every Western script alive today. This was a lean system of just 22 letters, all consonants, no vowels. And by the early first millennium BCE, it had committed decisively to right to left. We can see that commitment carved in stone. The Ahiram sarcophagus, dated to around 1000 BCE, carries one of the oldest substantial Phoenician inscriptions, and it runs cleanly right to left. Discovered in 1923 by the French archaeologist Pierre Montet at Byblos in modern Lebanon, its lid bears a curse, warning that any king who disturbs the tomb will see his rule overturned. This was a mature, confident script, in use from about 1050 BCE, descended from the earlier Proto-Sinaitic writing systems that appeared between 1900 and 1700 BCE in the turquoise mines of Serabit el-Khadim in the Sinai. Those Proto-Sinaitic marks numbered only around 30 signs and were themselves borrowed from Egyptian hieroglyphs, turned into sounds rather than pictures. By Ahiram's day, the wandering was over. The lane was set. So why that lane? Here comes the theory almost everyone reaches for first. Blame the chisel. Blame the hand that holds it. The logic is appealing because it's physical. About 90% of humans are right-handed, and that ratio held in the ancient world too. Imagine carving stone. You hold the chisel in your left hand and swing the hammer with your right. Where does the finished work sit most comfortably? To your right, out of the way. So you move leftward across the stone, keeping the chisel always ahead of what you've cut, right to left. This is the stonemason hypothesis, and for a right-handed carver, it genuinely feels natural. But here's where the tidy story falls apart. The moment you put down the chisel and pick up a pen, the physics reverse completely. Think about ink on papyrus. A right-handed scribe writing right to left drags his hand across the letters he just wrote while the ink is still wet. He smears his own work. And papyrus and ink came into wide use precisely as Semitic writing spread and matured. Egyptian scribes had been mixing soot, gum arabic, and water into ink since at least 3000 BCE. And by the first millennium BCE, reed pens and papyrus sheets were the everyday tools of administration from the Nile to the Levant. A scroll like the Elephantine Papyri, written by a Jewish community in Egypt during the 5th century BCE, shows Aramaic ink script running right to left despite this very smearing problem. For pen and ink, left to right is comfortable. It keeps the writing hand ahead of the wet line. So the chisel says one thing and the pen says the opposite. No single material could have dictated the direction alone. The tool theory, taken alone, collapses. And nothing proves that better than what happened next when the alphabet crossed the sea to Greece. Around 800 BCE, the Greeks borrowed the Phoenician letters wholesale. But they made a crucial upgrade. They added vowel letters, which Phoenician had never written. 5 signs the Phoenicians used for consonants their own language didn't need. Aleph, He, Yod, Ayin, and Waw. The Greeks repurposed into Alpha, Epsilon, Iota, Omicron, and Upsilon. And somewhere in that adaptation, over the following centuries, the Greeks abandoned right to left. The Dipylon inscription, scratched onto a wine jug in Athens around 740 BCE, still runs right to left, while an intermediate boustrophodon phase persisted through the 6th century. By the 5th century BCE, Greek had standardized firmly on left to right. Then Latin inherited that leftward flow from the Greek and Etruscan worlds, and through Latin, it spread to the entire Western alphabet you're reading now. So think about what this shows. The same alphabet, the same letters, the same right-handed carvers and scribes. And yet one branch went left to right, while the other stayed right to left. If the hand or the tool truly decided direction, both branches should have landed in the same place. They didn't. Something else was steering. Because while Greece flipped, the Semitic world held its ground. Hebrew and Aramaic kept the right-to-left inheritance without hesitation. And Aramaic, in particular, was about to become far more than a local script. Aramaic became the administrative language of the Persian Empire around 500 BCE. Under Darius I, whose realm stretched across roughly 5.5 million square kilometers and more than 20 provinces, imperial officials adopted Aramaic as the shared bureaucratic tongue, a status scholars call Imperial Aramaic. From Egypt to the edges of India, scribes conducted the business of empire in Aramaic, flowing right to left across every clay tablet and leather scroll. The Behistun inscription of Darius, carved into a cliff in western Iran around 520 BCE, was later copied and circulated in Aramaic on papyrus as far away as Egypt. The Hebrew square script, the very letter forms used to write Hebrew today, derives from this Aramaic tradition, not from the older Phoenician forms directly. The Dead Sea Scrolls, copied between roughly 250 BCE and 68 CE, already show this square Aramaic-derived hand. Aramaic spread across the Near East for centuries, and everywhere it went, it carried the rightward flow as settled fact. From this same Aramaic root grew the script that would spread faster and farther than any of them. Arabic script descends from the Nabatean form of Aramaic. the writing of the desert kingdom centered on Petra. The Nabateans, wealthy from taxing caravans of frankincense and myrrh, wrote a cursive Aramaic that gradually fused its letters together. The earliest identifiable Arabic inscriptions appear between the 4th and 6th centuries CE. The Namara inscription of 328 CE, marking the grave of the Arab king Imru al-Qais, sits right at this transition, still Nabatean in form but Arabic in language. Then, in the 7th century, the Quran standardized Arabic script and locked its forms and direction into a sacred, unchanging pattern. Around 650 CE, the Caliph Uthman ordered a single authoritative text compiled, and copies were dispatched to cities like Kufa, Basra, and Damascus. From there it exploded across the medieval world and never let go of right to left. Today, that same script serves not just Arabic, but Persian, Urdu, and many more. Hundreds of millions of readers, all moving right to left, all heirs to a habit set down in the ancient Near East. Now step back from the Mediterranean and the desert entirely, because other civilizations never even used the horizontal axis as their default. Traditional Chinese writing runs top to bottom in vertical columns, and those columns march from right to left across the page. Japanese preserves this too. Open a novel or manga volume, and you'll often find tatagaki, vertical writing read from the top down. Mongolian script is stranger still, written vertically but with columns advancing left to right. So the horizontal question that obsesses us, left or right, wasn't even the question these cultures were asking. They chose an entirely different axis. And modern Chinese now frequently uses horizontal left-to-right lines, a shift mainland China formalized in 1955 when newspapers and books began converting from vertical to horizontal layout, which only underlines the point: direction was never fixed by nature. It was chosen, and it could change. But here's the twist that exposes the deepest strangeness of all, and it's hiding inside Arabic itself. When Arabic writes numbers, those numbers run left to right. Even inside a sentence flowing right to left, a written figure like a year or a price reverses the current and reads leftward. The most significant digit sits on the left, exactly as in English. This is no accident, because the digits themselves travel to Europe through Arabic. We literally call them Arabic numerals. The scholar Al-Khwarizmi, working in Baghdad around 825 CE, wrote a treatise on calculating with these Indian-derived digits, and the Italian mathematician Fibonacci carried the system into Europe with his 1202 book Liber Abaci. So an Arabic sentence contains a hidden opposite current running against its own flow. We call text that mixes both directions in a single line bidirectional. And that quiet contradiction, tolerable on paper, becomes a genuine crisis the moment it enters a computer. Because inside a machine, every single character secretly carries a direction of its own. This is where the Unicode bidirectional algorithm takes over, the invisible referee for mixed text. Formally specified in the Unicode Standard Annex No. 9 and refined across dozens of versions since the early 1990s, it defines strong, weak, and neutral character types and processes text in nested levels. Unicode assigns each character a directional property. A letter in an Arabic word wants to go right to left. A digit wants to go left to right. A space is neutral and takes its cue from the neighbors. The crucial thing is that the order characters are stored in memory is not the order they appear on your screen. Storage order and display order can differ completely. The software must read the raw sequence, sort out every character's directional pull, and reorder the whole thing before your eyes ever see it. Phone numbers, web addresses, and mathematical expressions all force little islands of left-to-right movement inside a sea of right-to-left text. And getting that right is so delicate that engineers had to invent invisible characters just to keep a sentence from scrambling itself. Unicode includes marks you cannot see. The left-to-right mark and the right-to-left mark, silent flags that tell the algorithm which way an ambiguous neighbor should lean. Encoded at code points U plus 200E and U plus 200F, they occupy zero visible width yet carry a strong directional pull. There are stronger commands too, control characters that override direction outright. The embedding and override characters at U plus 202A through U plus 202E. Punctuation is the trickiest passenger of all, because a period or a parenthesis flips to the opposite side of a phrase depending on the text surrounding it. And these invisible controls carry a dark side. In 2021, security researchers Nicholas Boucher and Ross Anderson at the University of Cambridge revealed the Trojan source bug, cataloged as CVE 2021-42574, which used exactly these directional characters to make source code display one way to a human reviewer while the computer executed something entirely different. An invisible mark, hidden in plain sight, could disguise malicious code as harmless. And within days, compilers and code hosts like GitHub began flagging the hidden characters as warnings. That's how powerful and how dangerous an unseen sense of direction can be. So after all of this, the chisel, the pen, the empires, the algorithms, we can finally answer the question we started with. No single tool decided the direction of writing. The chisel favored one way, the pen favored the other, and neither won by force. What actually happened was quieter and more human. A direction was chosen early, while writing was still young and flexible, and then passed down by descent. Phoenicians' rightward choice propagated through Aramaic, and from Aramaic into Hebrew and Arabic. Greek's leftward flip propagated through Latin and into the entire Western world. Each branch simply inherited the habit of its parent. And once a script standardizes its direction, that direction resists change for millennia, because every reader and writer reinforces it every single day. That's the real lesson buried in these ancient letters. Direction is inherited, not invented. Today, more than 500 million people read right to left as effortlessly as you read left to right. Over 400 million in Arabic, millions more in Hebrew across Israel and beyond. And Unicode now supports every major script direction, letting modern software render mixed direction text seamlessly. Two ancient habits, born from the same 22 letters, still share our screens in perfect, invisible balance. If this journey through the hidden logic of writing sparked your curiosity, consider subscribing so you can join us for the next story.